Okay, today is April 16th, 2011. We're at the San Francisco Hilton, Union Square. I'm Karen Perrone, and I'm talking to John Culshaw, who works at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Hi, John.
Hey, Karen.
And would you like to explain to us what your job title is, and have you always been in that position?
I am currently the Senior Associate Dean for Administration, and I've been in this job for about 3 years.
Okay.
And prior to that, I was the head of the Systems Department, or the head of the IT department in the library for about 12 years. So a great deal of my IUG service was during my time as head of the Systems Department.
Okay. And how did you first become involved with the IUG?
Well, I first went to an IUG meeting before the IUG was really the IUG. It was before my time at Colorado. I was working in the library at Haverford College, and Haverford was in the process of migrating to its first ever online system, and Linda Bills was the automation coordinator. Automation, such a 1980s term. She was our coordinator and helping the library move, the tri-colleges move to its innovative system. And at attending one ALA meeting, I think maybe it was in Chicago, I remember going to an IUG meeting on a Friday afternoon before there were any IUG conferences. So that had to be in, I would say, 88 or 89.
Okay. And what was your first IUG meeting then, other than the pre-IUG?
My first IUG meeting was the second Claremont meeting, so that would have been 1995.
And you were in Boulder then?
I was in Boulder then, and we had just migrated from the Carl system to the innovative system. So, and I was a reference librarian at that point, so it was even before I had moved into the systems department.
Mm-hmm. And who was responsible for recruiting you, shall we say, for running for your first term?
Linda.
First term as
Linda,
president.
of course. So Linda and I continued to stay in touch after I moved from Haverford to Colorado. And as soon as we signed on with Innovative, Linda immediately recruited me to run for the steering committee, and she said, well, you might as well start at the top, and said I should run for vice chair, chair-elect. And I did, and I won.
And which conference was that?
That was at the Claremont.
That was at the Claremont.
So when I was elected, I was just about to attend my first IUG.
Wow. That's great. So you were chair first time around in...
I was chair the first time in Providence. I was vice chair in Providence. I was chair in Oakland, and I was past chair in Nashville.
Okay.
The first time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time, I was vice chair for Washington, D.C. I was chair for Anaheim and past chair in Chicago.
Okay. And what provoked you to run for a second term many years later?
Well, you know, in the early days when you were chair of the IUG, there was no support for conference management. There was no business support for the organization on its own. It seemed like the chair had to spend so much time being the CEO of this organization and worrying about business details. So I think I learned a whole lot more about making contracts with hotels. What does it mean to buy a can of soda for an attendee at a conference? I learned all of the details of conference management on my first time around. And the second time around, I really wanted to have more of a hand in the content of the program. So not that I wasn't involved in the content of the program the first time, but I thought I had more to offer in terms of putting together a more useful conference experience for attendees. So that was really the reason that I wanted to do it a second time.
Okay. And did you notice many differences between the first time around and the second time?
Well, the second time was so much easier because the chair is no longer fully distracted by all of the intricate conference arrangements because the IUG contracts with ICM to do that. All of the financial things are contracted with Kathy O'Gorman. So I think the steering committee today can really focus more on the content of the conferences and of the benefits of being a member of the group than we were able to in the early days.
Have you seen many changes over the years in the layout of the programs and the conference and things like that?
I think, I guess if I have a legacy as a past chair of the group, I think the very early days, so when I was Linda's vice chair and those first few years, I think there was a strong grassroots movement in this organization, and there were a lot of things that were very family-oriented, kind of, and sort of fun. The kazoos come to mind. The one at the conference giveaway at probably the Claremont, or maybe even in Columbus. I'm not sure, but was a kazoo, and Linda rewrote the words to popular songs like 99 bottles of beer on the wall to relate to the innovative system, and these songs would be reprinted in the guides, and it was all a little bit of craziness, but I think it was really important toward the foundation of a strong group in the future. So I think in my first role as chair, I really had a goal to sort of move the organization to a different level and to make it a bit more professional. Not that I'm not judging the previous things. I just think it was time because the group was growing. So it was time to move on from a fully grassroots sort of organization and present itself a little more seriously, if you will. The second time around, a lot of the changes that I made, I think, were maturing the organization quite a bit. When I became vice chair, I discovered that we were still using a conference management system that Peter had built nearly 10 years ago. And it was a homegrown system. It wasn't working very well in terms of managing where programs went and then exporting it for publication. And there were really no easy ways of rating programs or blogging about programs or commenting on programs. So that's when we added a new contractor to the mix, which was contracting with the Kipu group to build a conference management system specifically for the IUG. And I think that was another piece that was missing at this point. So if conference management is a three-legged stool, it means that first came the conference management with ICM and PIA. About the same time came the financial management with Kathy O'Gorman. And then finally, a few years later, we added the technology support services from the Kipu group. So those are some of the organizational changes that I think I would point to. Then, of course, there's the change in the size of the group. And at the Claremont, we had maybe 300 people back in '95. I think we quickly grew to about 600 people in Providence. And then, lo and behold, in Oakland, there were about 800 people wanting to come to the conference. We had filled the hotel. And I'll never forget going back to Oakland for a second site visit to find more hotel rooms.
Wow.
And when we contracted with the hotel in Oakland, it was actually called the Park Oakland. And it was part of a small local chain, the same as the Park 55, which is right behind us. I'm looking around because it's right behind us, across the street from the Hilton. And then in the course of all of this, it became a Marriott property. So everything sort of changed in the middle. We had the entire hotel. The hotel is connected to the convention center, which was the city of Oakland's property. And we had to find hotels. And in the mid-'90s, there weren't a lot of options for hotels in downtown Oakland. Maybe there are still no options for hotels in downtown Oakland, but I just remember going into this Travelodge, and Linda and I walked in, and we were like, there's no way we can put our people up here. And we eventually found a Best Western further down the street, but those were the sorts of things that you had to worry about in the early days, and today PIA takes care of all of that.
Isn't that nice?
It's very nice. I wouldn't have done it again if it weren't for that.
What's your most memorable conference? Or several if you have them.
That's really hard, I would say. I mean, I've been to, this is 17 in a row for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the first one, is very memorable. When I found out that I was going to be vice chair the following year, so that was certainly exciting. Providence was a great conference. We were the hotel was brand new at that point. It hadn't been open for more than a few months. And, talk about learning by the seat of your pants. That was really ramping up and getting ready to go. Nashville was a hoot.
Talk about Nashville.
Nashville, we had in the early days, part of the conference experience was side trips and doing things in the local area, and the IUG would put all of these things together. And well, first off, Nashville was hit by a tornado about a week before the conference started, and the tornado went right through downtown Nashville, including taking out a sky bridge between the hotel that we were staying in and the parking lot across the street. So when we arrived, there was still plywood covering the windows, and it was really pretty crazy in terms of arriving there. But we picked Nashville because there were a lot of things to do very close by in the downtown area. We had our party at the Wild Horse Saloon. And there was a TV show about the Wild Horse Saloon back in those days, and everybody was out there learning to line dance, and it was really quite a party, I would have to say. And I was past chair at that point. I remember I spent a lot of time with Eileen Rockman at that meeting, and she was a really important mentor. And as I was past chair, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next in terms of systems librarianship and what I was going to do. And she and I and Fred went out to lunch, and we brainstormed all sorts of different things. And I still remember that lunch very well.
Yeah. And that was the first meeting where I met you. Was Nashville.
It was Nashville. Okay.
That was my first year on the steering committee.
Okay. What else is memorable? Boston is a memorable conference for me because eventually I was able to negotiate and get a second systems librarian position in our organization, and we recruited and hired Holly Long, and she and I did a presentation on screenshots, and it was about using not Camtasia. Maybe it is Camtasia, but it was about creating screenshots and kind of do-it-yourself training for Millennium modules. And she and I did that presentation together, and it was her first national presentation. So I remember that as a mentor. I think Boston was one of the first times we did a past chairs dinner. We went to the Cheesecake Factory. How do we remember these things?
We just do.
We just do. So Boston is memorable because of that. Denver was nice to have the IUG at home in Denver, and I chaired the local arrangements committee and got to see lots of people. And I think chairing the local arrangements committee that year in Denver probably also really re-energized me and reminded me how important the IUG has been to me in my career as my professional service. So that probably also engaged me to do it again. And then, of course, the three where I was chair the last time, Washington, D.C. was great. Washington, D.C. was kind of the last of the big IUGs recently, where the hotel was not big enough for attendees, and we had a shuttle bus running from the Hilton, I believe, between the Hilton and the Omni Showroom, and We had a great steering committee those years, and not that my previous steering committee wasn't great, but I think I had matured as a leader, and I think I was able to really help bring that group together, and it was a pretty special 3 years.
Were you involved over the years with the side trips and things like that, or?
Not really as much.
Okay.
I in Nashville, I remember being toured around by like a convention and visitor bureau person, and she said, well, you want to go here and you want to go there and you want to do this. I just know that in Nashville it was a disaster because the buses didn't show up, and then somehow Barbara Ritchie from the University of San Diego figured out how to get people where they were supposed to go, and something maybe didn't pan out and refunds had to be offered. And after Nashville, there were no more side trips.
Right.
And if somebody wanted to go to Opryland, they would have to go to Opryland on their own because it was really too much work. So I did go to one of the places, I believe, in Providence, out in Newport. There was an event that went out to one of the mansions in Newport. But beyond that, I wasn't really involved too much with the side trips.
Okay. How do you think the users group works with Innovative? Has it been a good working relationship, or?
I think it's a very good working relationship. I think it's beneficial to both parties. It's unique among technology organizations in that it really is it's an independent users group. I think that can be a challenge sometime. I think there are some small tensions when dealing particularly with other exhibitors, or deciding what's appropriate or what isn't appropriate for conference content. But I think the organization has really stood its ground, and I think that the users group brings strong feedback and input to Innovative for its line of products, and I think that Innovative returns the favor by really allowing customers to have the voice in the development of the system, and I think there are really close relationships built. It's really one big happy family in many ways. And the relationships that we build with Innovative staffers are the same that we build with customers over the years. And I wonder if that would be different if it were an Innovative sponsored group. I almost think it would. I think maybe the fact that the IUG is an independent organization allows some of these relationships to develop, whereas if it were something that were fully corporate sponsored, it might have a very different tone. But I think the company and the users group work very well together to put on not just a conference, but activities and things year-round for folks.
How do you think the IUG has thrived throughout the years, and is it still relevant?
Well, it's certainly thrived because of its members. People have been thankless with their commitment to the organization, both at the leadership level and at the membership level. It's never a problem to find people to present. Look at the IUG list. Even if there were no IUG conference, I think we tend to, since we're here at conference, I think we often tend to think of the IUG as this conference-related thing. But there really is so much more that the IUG does, and sponsoring the listserv seems like a really small thing, but if you have a problem and you can't find it in the documentation, or you're not getting anywhere with the help desk, chances are a query to that list will come through and will tell you what you need to do. So I think that's a really important part of it. I think the entire user community is engaged, both through the list, through presentations, and all of the above. There was a second half to your question.
Is it still relevant?
Yes, it is still relevant. And I think I would point back still to the same two things, both to the conference, to the listserv. Even though the economy has sort of put a dent in the way we all do business, and has really hampered many institutions' ability to send lots of folks to a national conference. There's still a strong presence of people coming to the national meeting. There's still a very strong amount of traffic on the listserv. So I think even though in the old days there may have been many more questions about circulation or cataloging or detailed pieces of the system, I think we're seeing the same thing today in terms of usability or connecting to other services or Web 2.0 issues. So it's a whole new set of things, and I think the people who are interested and the people who are involved evolve over time, because something will change and then it gets better and you don't need the users group, so you sail along for a little while and then you face a new problem, and so it comes and goes, and that's probably part of it too, because there are so many different parts of the system, that there are so many of those different ups and downs, that it always seems like a unified whole.
You talked a little bit about the Kipu group,
Yes.
and was that, what exactly brought that about, that we decided to go with a hosting service like that?
Well, it was the same reason, that we, similar reason, for the reason to outsource conference management. When I became vice chair, Nancy was chair at the time, and the IUG had been relying on a strong group of volunteers over time to maintain its technical infrastructure. And this included not only the listserv, but the website, all of the various online tools related to the conference. And there were a handful of people involved in this, and Phil Shirley is still the manager of the listserv, and Phil is one of those people. But Kyle Banerjee and Terry Reese, from the Northwest area, maybe they're both at Oregon State, I think, had spent an incredible amount of energy building these tools, but they were very busy with many other things. The organization was having new demands in terms of faster response time, to get conference materials up and posted. And I think we were also seeing problems with transition between volunteers. It's no different than if you develop something in your library. If you build something, as soon as the person who built it leaves, somebody else has to figure out how to make it run. And that's what we were finding out, is that every time we ran into a problem, it was something that, somebody did that a few years ago, or somebody changed that code and that's why it doesn't work. So we felt it was really important to have some more consistency in the technical platform for the IUG, and that's why we decided to work with Kipu to move forward. And there were a lot of reasons why we selected Kipu. First is Kipu is located in Denver. And the principals of the organization have worked either at innovative libraries in Colorado, or they worked at the Colorado Alliance of Research Libraries, which manages the InReach server prospector for many of us in Colorado. So the Kipu staff already had a familiarity with the IUG, with the IUG's mission, with what the IUG was trying to do. So it was really a natural fit. And Nancy and I worked with the old system, and it was while I was chair and Carol Geiger was vice chair that we really rolled out the new platform from Kipu. And that was also an advantage because Carol and I were both local, well, as local as you get, 75 miles between Denver and Fort Collins. But it was possible for us to physically meet with Kipu many times during the course of the year, to create a system that worked for us. And it was all built on the open source platform, the open conference system. And I understand that the steering committee was meeting with Kipu at this conference about changing some of that again, which is fine because there is now a company that can support that for us. But that's a little bit of the history of Kipu.
Oh, that's great. If you had one suggestion, now that you've been through the chair rotation twice, you had a suggestion for the incoming chair of how to make this organization run better, what would it be?
Was that question on your list? I haven't thought about that one.
Give some sage advice.
I think my advice would be to be yourself, and to use your own leadership style. Every chair of the group has been different. No one person is perfect at the job, and each one of us has brought our own style to the position. And I think that's part of the unique nature of the position, is you can really make it your own. I think engage your committee. Don't be afraid to delegate. Your committee is there to help. Your committee is there to do things, and delegate, check in, and try to do some things that are special for your group. I mean, and there are different ways you can do that. And it just happened that when I was the chair, the ALA midwinter meeting was in Denver. So I was able to have a cocktail party for the steering committee at my house, which was great. And I think other people have different ways of doing things like that in terms of building a team and encouraging the group to work together. And the steering committee is your most important resource when you're the chair of this organization. So you have to put on your best leadership hat and figure out how to make use of the many, many talents that you have around you.
Do you have any final thoughts or memories that you'd like to share here?
Oh. I guess I would just say that, the IUG has been such a critical component of my career, and I think has really made me a better librarian. I think it's made me a better leader. And I think in many ways it's sort of helped me define what I plan to do with my career in the future. I think I've really been able to build my leadership skills through this group. And I've met so many friends and wonderful people. And it's hard to step to a new level and sort of move away from this. Because I don't manage the system anymore, and there are other folks doing that in the organization now, and it's hard to let it go after 17 years, but I think it's a great organization, and I would certainly encourage anyone in the field to participate.
And we're glad that you've done it so well for us. So
Thanks.
thank you for coming today.
Thank you.